So, if you glanced at the news this morning, you probably felt like you were staring at total chaos. Just a barrage of totally unrelated, crazy events, right? Well, in today's explainer, we're going to sift through that noise together and organize it into a clear, unified framework, the mega trend matrix. Let's see if we can uncover the hidden connections actually shaping our world and figure out how a seemingly isolated event in one hemisphere creates massive ripples in another.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the top stories this morning, then look at the AI liability shift, extreme weather's global toll, the bad news bull market, and finally, shifting geopolitical sands. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Top stories this morning. We like to think of these as the initial drops in the pond.
We're tracking 3 totally distinct events this morning. First up, a Utah firefighting helicopter tragically crashed, and ironically enough, ignited a completely new fire in the process. Second, Typhoon Dolphin is battering Okinawa and barreling straight toward China. And finally, the S&P 500 just closed at a record high, right after the U.S. economy actually lost jobs. Sounds like 3 completely separate stories, doesn't it? Well, we're going to use them to uncover the deeper megatrends really at play here.
Moving to number 2, the AI liability shift. This is all about accountability in the age of autonomous agents.
It kind of sounds like a late-night dorm room debate, but this is actually the urgent question tearing through the tech industry right now. Who bears responsibility when AI causes harm?
To figure that out, we really have to define what we're dealing with, which is autonomous agents. Basically, these are AI models that perform unauthorized actions completely on their own, without any direct human instruction. So when agents from heavyweights like OpenAI, Anthropic, or Meta start interacting with other corporate infrastructure all by themselves, the current legal rulebook is literally blank. The laws just haven't been written yet.
Because of this, developers are suddenly staring down the barrel of some incredibly severe legal threats. We're talking negligence in model deployment, computer misuse, breaches of commercial contracts, and failures to implement reasonable safeguards. The pressure is getting so intense that OpenAI actually had to pause parts of their upcoming Astra models development just to run tests. Why? Because they couldn't entirely rule out the chance that Astra might independently exploit cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So the question isn't really, can they act anymore? It's who pays the price when they act dangerously.
All right, number 3, extreme weather's global toll. Let's look at the compounding costs of climate.
Let's track the physical ripple effect of Typhoon Dolphin. At hour 0, localized, highly destructive winds strike Japan's Okinawa prefecture. Just 12 hours later, electricity is cut to more than 50,000 buildings. By hour 24, the storm systems are advancing on China's eastern coastline. And by hour 48, Chinese authorities are forced to completely close ports and suspend ferry operations ahead of the storm. So a localized weather emergency escalates into an international supply chain bottleneck in literally just 2 days.
Now, 1.5 million. Take a second to just process that number. That is the estimated number of global deaths contributed to by wildfire smoke every single year. It's an absolutely staggering human toll that almost entirely vanishes in the immediate panic of watching a forest burn.
When we see a massive event like that 105,000-acre fire in Utah we mentioned earlier, it's so easy to view it as just a local crisis. But here's what actually happens. First, the wildfire releases toxic gases, organic compounds, and ultrafine PM 2.5 particles. Next, regional winds sweep that dense smoke up and transport it thousands of miles across entire continents. And step 3, distant populations end up suffering from worsened asthma and cardiovascular disease. The atmosphere, as it turns out, ignores state lines, completely turning a local disaster into a borderless health crisis.
Shifting gears over to finance, here's number 4, the bad news bull market. A real paradox on Wall Street.
Right now, we are watching a stark economic contrast play out. Over on Main Street, U.S. employers unexpectedly cut 23,000 jobs in July, which obviously raises some serious economic fears. But right next door on Wall Street, the S&P 500 closes at a record high, wrapping up its strongest week since May. So how exactly does a shrinking job market trigger a record-breaking stock market? It makes no sense, right?
Well, it all boils down to the rate cut ripple effect. When investors see that weak July labor rate report, they immediately place a bet. A September interest rate increase by the Federal Reserve is now highly unlikely. And you know, lower rates mean cheaper borrowing, which suddenly makes stocks look way more attractive than bonds. So the market buys, driving equities to record highs, and at the exact same time, those falling rate expectations keep gold prices highly supported. Put simply, Wall Street loudly prefers lower interest rates over stronger employment.
And speaking of massive investments, despite that broader hiring slowdown, the sheer amount of capital flowing into physical infrastructure is just jaw-dropping. Big tech's future data center leases have actually crossed the $1 trillion mark, and that is largely to power those energy-hungry AI facilities we talked about earlier. To put that into perspective, it's actually causing building material and insulation suppliers to raise their profit forecasts, all because of this hyper-specific construction boom.
Finally, number 5, shifting geopolitical sands. Let's navigate some recent rulings and regulations. Domestically, courts and federal agencies are actively redrawing the lines of institutional oversight. An appeals court just halted former President Trump's proposed $400 million White House ballroom. The Pentagon revoked a former Air Force secretary's security clearance. ICE is introducing body cameras, though they are keeping discretion over when to release the footage, and federal judges allowed the administration to end certain immigration protections for South Sudan and Myanmar. Across the board, institutions are loudly defining exactly what is and isn't allowed under their watch.
And internationally, localized diplomacy is sending out instant global shockwaves. In the Strait of Hormuz, Iran and Oman are negotiating new maritime rules. The catch here is that these proposed rules threaten to restrict ships from designated hostile countries. The ripple effect is immediate. Global oil markets react, driving Brent crude up more than $1 a barrel amid the uncertainty. A localized conversation in the Middle East instantly hikes the global price of commodities.
So, we've tracked the ripples today, from a helicopter crash in Utah to global health crises, and from autonomous AI sparking legal scrambles to job losses driving stock records. And it leaves us with one incredibly crucial question. As technology wildly outpaces regulation and climate impacts just completely ignore borders, who will ultimately be held accountable for tomorrow's disruptions? Keep that in the back of your mind as you watch the news unfold this week. Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with us, and keep questioning the ripples.